You have a favorite black t-shirt, or a pair of black jeans, or a black dress you once loved, and somewhere along the way it stopped being black. Now it's a tired, washed-out gray, dull and lifeless, and you assume it's ruined and headed for the trash or the rag pile. Here's what almost nobody knows. In most cases, that garment isn't actually worn out at all, and the deep black can be brought back, often with nothing more than things already in your kitchen. In Japan, where black clothing is worn with a certain reverence, and where the philosophy of Motonai makes throwing away something still usable feel genuinely wrong, there's a patient, gentle approach to reviving faded black that most people in the West have never heard of. This is how the Japanese bring dull, faded black clothing back to a deep, rich black without buying anything new. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why your black clothes faded in the first place, how to restore them, and how to keep them from ever fading again. Let's get into it. Before you can fix faded black, you have to understand what actually happened to it, because this single insight changes your whole approach and reveals why so much faded clothing isn't really faded at all. There are actually two completely different things going on when black clothing looks dull, and telling them apart is the key to everything. The first is genuine dye loss. Black fabric gets its color from dye bonded to the fibers, and every time you wash a garment, the friction of the wash, the heat of hot water, harsh detergents, and especially exposure to the sun's ultraviolet light all slowly break down and strip away those dye molecules. Over many washes, real dye is genuinely lost, and the black fades toward gray. That's the fading everyone assumes they're dealing with. It helps to know that black is actually one of the hardest colors to keep, because a deep black is built from a heavy load of dye packed into the fibers, so it has the most to lose, and the synthetic dyes used to achieve it are especially vulnerable to being oxidized and broken down by air, light, and repeated washing. That's why black, more than almost any color, drifts toward that telltale dull gray as it ages. But here's the second thing, and it's the one almost nobody knows. A huge amount of what looks like faded black isn't lost dye at all. It's a dull film sitting on top of the fabric. That film is built up from detergent residue that never fully rinsed out, from fabric softener, and from the mineral deposits in hard water, and it coats the fibers in a chalky, grayish haze that hides the black underneath. In other words, a lot of your faded black clothing still has its black, it's just buried under a layer of gunk. And this changes everything. Because if much of the dullness is film rather than lost dye, then a huge part of the fix isn't re-dyeing at all. It's simply stripping away that film to reveal the black that was there the whole time. The Japanese approach works with both of these, gently removing the film first, and then deepening or replacing the dye only as much as each garment actually needs. Now that you understand what you're really looking at, let's break down exactly how to restore it, step by step. And if that already makes sense, hit subscribe, because the first method is the one that surprises people most. The first method is the one that does the most work for the least effort, and it targets that hidden film directly, the white vinegar rinse. This is the real workhorse of black clothing restoration, and understanding why it works is the key. White vinegar is a mild acid, and it does several things at once that are perfect for reviving black. It dissolves and strips away the detergent residue, the fabric softener buildup, and the hard water mineral film that's been dulling your fabric, cutting straight through the chalky haze to reveal the true black underneath. At the same time, it helps the fibers hold onto their existing dye and even acts as a natural fabric softener, so the fabric comes out feeling better too. The method is beautifully simple. Wash the black garment and add about 1 cup of white vinegar to the rinse cycle, or soak the garment in cold water with a cup of vinegar for around 15 to 30 minutes before a final rinse. Don't worry about the smell. It rinses out completely as the fabric dries, leaving no vinegar odor behind. For an enormous number of faded black items, this one step alone produces a dramatic difference, because you're not adding any color, you're simply removing the film that was hiding the color that was always there. If your black clothes are more dull than truly faded, the vinegar rinse might be the only thing you ever need. And there's a simple way to guess which situation you're in before you start. Hold the garment up to strong light and look at the seams and the inside of the fabric, the parts that get less friction and less sun. If the inside and the seams are still noticeably darker and richer than the outer surface, then a lot of your color is still there, and merely hidden or worn on the surface, which is exactly the case the vinegar rinse rescues so well. If even the protected seams have gone gray, the dye loss is deeper, and you'll likely need the coffee soak or, for the worst cases, a real dye. That 30-second check tells you which method to reach for and saves you effort. The second method builds on the first for garments that need a real color boost, and it uses something you probably brewed this morning: strong black coffee or black tea. This is the classic natural way to deepen faded black, and it works through real chemistry. Both coffee and black tea are rich in tannins and dark pigments, and when you soak faded black fabric in a strong, dark brew, those pigments deposit onto the fibers and impart a deep brown-black undertone that enhances the perception of richness and depth, making a tired gray garment look black again. The method: first, wash the garment and, importantly, skip the fabric softener, which would create a barrier that blocks absorption. Brew a strong batch, a full pot of dark coffee or several bags of black tea steeped strong, and let it cool to warm. Submerge the damp garment fully in the brew, making sure it's evenly and completely saturated, and let it soak for at least 20 to 30 minutes, or even longer, up to a few hours or overnight for a deeper result. Then rinse in cold water until the water runs clear and air dry. Here's the honest truth about this method, and it's important. Coffee and tea give a semi-permanent result, a genuine boost to depth and richness that will gradually lighten again over several washes. So it's ideal for garments that are only moderately faded, and it's something you simply repeat every so often as maintenance. It's not permanent dye, but it's a gentle, natural, chemical-free way to bring back depth, and it's perfect for that beloved t-shirt that just needs to look black again. One tip to make the result last a little longer: add a tablespoon of salt or a splash of vinegar to the coffee or tea bath, which helps the fabric grab and hold the pigment a bit more effectively, and rinse in cold rather than warm water at the end so you're not immediately washing out what you just deposited. And because this method works by depositing dark pigment, it works best on fabrics that absorb well. Natural fibers like cotton take it far better than slick synthetics, so a cotton t-shirt will drink up the color while a polyester blend will show a subtler effect. By the way, all of this is part of one bigger system. If you want the complete Japanese method, with every trick like this for clothes and belongings that are cared for and made to last, the full book is linked in the description of this video and on the channel. It's there if you want it. The third method is for the garments that are genuinely, heavily faded, where the dye really is gone and no amount of film removal will bring it back. Proper fabric dye. When a black garment has truly lost its color, the only thing that restores a deep, permanent, full black is re-dyeing it, and this is the real solution the natural methods can only approximate. A quality black fabric dye, the kind you can buy in a packet and use at home, rebonds actual black pigment to the fibers, and done right, it can make a washed-out garment look genuinely new again. The process, in short: check that your fabric can take the dye. Natural fibers like cotton, linen, and wool take dye beautifully, while some synthetics like polyester resist it and need special formulas. Wash the garment first so it's clean and damp, which helps the dye absorb evenly. Prepare the dye bath with very hot water following the packet instructions, and here's a genuinely useful detail rooted in dye chemistry. Add a cup of salt to the dye bath when dyeing cotton, linen, or rayon, because salt helps drive the dye into those fibers, and add a cup of white vinegar instead when dyeing silk, wool, or nylon, because vinegar sets the dye in those. Submerge the garment. Keep it moving so the color takes evenly with no blotches. Let it soak for the time the dye directs, longer for a deeper black, then rinse in cool water until it runs clear and wash it alone the first time. Wear gloves throughout unless you want black hands for a week. Fabric dye is more effort than a vinegar rinse, but for a garment that's truly faded, it's the only method that delivers a deep, lasting, like-new black, and it can rescue a piece you were about to throw away for the price of a dye packet. Now here comes the part that's more important than any restoration method, the part that means you'll rarely need to do any of this again, preventing your black clothes from fading in the first place. Think back to what causes fading: the friction and heat of washing, harsh detergents, that dulling film, and sunlight. Every one of those is something you control, and the Japanese approach to caring for clothing is built on gentle habits that protect the color so it lasts for years instead of washes. This is the real secret, because the best-looking black wardrobe isn't the one that gets restored often. It's the one that barely fades at all. Before we get into it, if you're finding this useful, hit subscribe, because prevention is where you actually win the war against fading. Prevention habit number 1, and it's the biggest of all. Wash your black clothes less often, in cold water, and turned inside out. Each of these directly attacks a cause of fading. Washing less often means less friction and less dye loss, simply, and most clothes are washed far more than they need to be, so wear your black items more than once between washes when they're not truly dirty. Washing in cold water is critical, because heat is a major driver of dye breakdown, so cold water preserves black dramatically better than warm or hot. And turning garments inside out before washing means the abrasion of the wash hits the inside of the fabric rather than the visible outer surface where the color shows, so the fading that does happen is hidden. These 3 habits together, less, cold, inside out, do more to keep black looking black than anything else you can do. 2 small additions make them even better. Wash your black clothes with similar dark colors rather than mixed loads, so you're not exposing them to the lint and dye-loosening agitation of a mixed wash. And put delicate black items in a mesh laundry bag, which cushions them from the friction of the drum that wears color off the surface. Less friction, less heat, less exposure. That's the whole formula. And every one of these habits is just another way of reducing one of those 3. Prevention habit number 2. Use a gentle detergent made for dark colors. Use less of it, and skip the fabric softener entirely. The wrong products are a major, hidden cause of dull black. Harsh detergents strip dye, and using too much detergent, which almost everyone does, leaves that dulling residue film we talked about. So use a mild detergent, ideally one formulated for darks or blacks, and use less than you think you need. And avoid fabric softener on your blacks, because it coats the fibers in a film that both dulls the color and, over time, contributes to that grayish haze, the very film you'd later have to strip out with vinegar. In fact, a splash of white vinegar in the rinse makes a far better softener for black clothes than any commercial softener, keeping them soft and protecting the color at the same time. Match the product to the fabric. Use less and skip the softener, and you cut off 2 of the biggest causes of fading at once. Prevention habit number 3. Never dry black clothes in direct sunlight, and go easy on the dryer. Sunlight is one of the most powerful faders of all, because ultraviolet radiation breaks down dye molecules directly, which is why a black shirt dried repeatedly in the sun goes gray so fast. So always dry your black clothing in the shade or indoors, out of direct sun. The same principle Japanese care applies to protecting fabric and color. And go easy on the tumble dryer too, because its heat and tumbling both accelerate fading and wear, so air drying in a shaded, ventilated spot is far gentler and keeps black for much longer. If you do use the dryer, use low heat and the shortest cycle. Keeping black clothes out of the sun and the high heat protects the dye from 2 of its worst enemies. Prevention habit number 4. Store black clothes properly and keep up a little gentle maintenance. Even in storage, black can fade, because light coming through a window slowly bleaches fabric over time, so store your black garments in a cool, dark, dry place away from direct light. And fold in a little maintenance to your routine. An occasional vinegar rinse to keep film from building up, and a coffee or tea soak every so often for pieces that need a touch of depth, so your blacks are continuously kept rich rather than being allowed to fade all the way and then rescued. This gentle, ongoing care is exactly the Japanese approach. Small, consistent attention that keeps things at their best rather than waiting for them to deteriorate. A black wardrobe that's maintained a little, often, simply never reaches the sad gray stage in the first place. Now, this is where this channel is always honest with you, because you deserve to know what these methods really can and can't do. First, on the natural methods. The vinegar rinse genuinely revives clothes, whose dullness is mostly film, and it's remarkable how much black it can bring back. But if the dye is truly gone, vinegar can only do so much. It reveals the black that's left. It can't create black that isn't there. Second, coffee and tea genuinely deepen and enrich faded black, but as we said, the effect is semi-permanent and fades over several washes, and on very light or heavily faded garments, the effect will be subtle. They're best for a moderate refresh, not a miracle. Third, only real fabric dye delivers a deep, permanent, like-new black on heavily faded clothing. And even then, results vary by fabric. Some synthetics simply won't take ordinary dye, and an old garment may take the color a little unevenly. And fourth, be realistic about the garment itself. If a piece is worn thin, misshapen, or falling apart, restoring the color won't bring back the fabric, and at that point it may genuinely be time to let it go or repurpose it. The honest bottom line is that the large majority of faded black clothing can be brought back to looking rich and black again, often stunningly so. But match the method to the garment, and keep your expectations matched to how far gone it really is. And a quick word on safety, because a couple of these methods involve products and dyes. Never mix cleaning or laundry products together, and in particular, never mix vinegar with bleach, which releases toxic gas. Vinegar goes in with water on its own. When using fabric dye, wear gloves and old clothes, work in a ventilated space, protect your surfaces because dye stains everything it touches, and follow the packet's instructions and safety warnings exactly. Do a test on a hidden part of the garment first when trying any method on something delicate or valuable to make sure the fabric responds the way you expect. And keep all products and dyes safely stored away from children and pets. Respect those, and every method here is safe and gentle. So let's bring the whole approach together, because it's genuinely simple once you understand it. First, understand that faded black is usually two things: real dye loss and a dulling film of residue, and much of what looks faded is just that film. To restore it, start with a white vinegar rinse to strip the film and reveal the black underneath, which alone rescues a huge share of dull garments. For a natural depth boost on moderately faded pieces, soak them in strong black coffee or tea. And for truly heavily faded clothing, use proper fabric dye, with salt for cotton and vinegar for wool and silk, for a deep, permanent black. Then, most importantly, prevent it from ever fading again. Wash less, in cold water, inside out, with a gentle dark clothes detergent and no fabric softener. Dry in the shade, never the sun, store away from light, and keep up a little gentle maintenance. Do that, and your black clothes come back to a deep, rich black, and stay that way for years, all without buying a single new thing. And if you want the complete Japanese method, with every trick like this for a wardrobe and a home where things are cared for and made to last, the full book is linked in the description of this video and on the channel. And if this brought your black clothes back to life, wait until you see what the Japanese method does with the white clothes that have gone dingy and yellow-gray, the other half of your wardrobe that fades in the opposite direction. In the next video, you'll see how to bring your whites back to a bright, crisp white without a drop of bleach. See you in the next one.